my closest boxing internet bros that I might never meet in real life.
I'm
We're
on the
gonna
East
be.
Coast. Yeah, sorry.
It's the Philly Gray fathers in the house, man. How do you
Yeah, what's up?
feel taking your victory lap?
Uh, I'm fine, man. It feels. I'm just. It was a great. It was a good fight for him, man. Great fight. I mean, I love Fulton still. He's a good, really good fighter and all that. But I just didn't appreciate. I guess we'll talk more about it. But like, I don't know. People were really underselling Inoue, like on Twitter,
Let's
and
get into it right now.
very
Why don't
weird.
you
Okay.
explain the underselling of Inoue and, like, in my opinion, kind of overselling Fulton, who I really like,
Yeah.
underappreciated fighter. But it's like, if you
Mhm.
look, he won his fight against Angelo Leo and then had a really hard fight that a lot of us didn't think he beat Figueroa in, and then he fought
Absolutely.
Daniel Roman in this, like, really uneventful, pretty missable fight. And then, like, it's like, well, that was just what you needed to beat this 3 division world champion who was looking like a tour de force.
No,
Nope.
I mean, yeah, I know, and I think there was a lot like, and I picked in a way to win on points when I was asked about this fight a couple days ago, and obviously he performed better than I even expected. But you know, I looked at Fulton and I saw a guy that he's a good boxer and he can fight off the ropes and coming forward, and I respect that. And but I didn't see anything that really indicated to me that he had power to bother in a way at all. And I didn't think that at some point I figured I think in a way I was going to test him with a big shot and he was going to get caught and something, you have to figure, either he could handle it or he couldn't. And he got caught with something he didn't see. And he got outboxed on top of that. Like in a way outboxed him. In a way didn't just hit him with a big, one punch and that was it. It was a outboxing for 7 rounds, and then he beat him up in the eighth with a punch that he didn't see. So it really exceeded my expectations. If anything, I think Inoue is a better was. I believe coming to the fight Inoue was not only a better, obviously an amazing puncher, but he was a better boxer than Fulton, and he proved it today. I mean, he was hurting him. I mean, he was throwing everything with power behind it, and he was jabbing to the body. He was just working the jab, and he did everything he needed to do to just win rounds. I mean, I thought it was like 6-1 going into the eighth round, so he was well ahead. He didn't even, he could have probably won the fight on points if he really wanted to, but he hit him with a great shot, and then he hit him with an amazing follow-up shot. In Fulton's credit, he got up, man. Like that left that put him down was fucking brutal. Like, I could not believe how hard that punch was. And God bless him for getting back up and trying to shake out the cobwebs. But it was a beautiful finish. And yeah, I just think people clearly there were a lot of people on Twitter that didn't really follow Inoue's career throughout the years, and you could tell who those people were, and you can tell the people that probably only watch Fulton fights because they're only watching fights on one platform. And when you put the blinders on and you don't see the things that, if you're watching all these guys fights and you're watching the stuff in Japan, you're watching stuff below 122 pounds, you're going to miss things. And you probably miss that you're watching a generational talent,
All
a
time great.
all-time great that's going to probably go up to featherweight and do good things there at some point too.
Probably be undisputed by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean that's top of list. It's going to be a tough fight, but I think it will be. I actually think he's going to. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little bit of a tougher fight than Fulton was. I'm not saying Marlon's making it the distance or anything, but don't be surprised if he's a tough out and wins a round or two. But yeah, he's a very good chance of becoming undisputed in another weight class, and if he is, then you're looking at 2024 potentially at featherweight. That's insane. That's it's not a lot of guys doing that, and he's not just beating these guys, he's knocking them out, stopping them. Okay, so when
Making
you're
them look average.
average, this was easy work for him today. Sorry, but it was. It's what it looked like. And when your favorite fighter keeps scratching 115, 113 decisions on these big shows, and you want to call him pound for pound number one, just remember, really, there's not many guys in the sport that are going out there and smoking their opponents easily. This was an easy fight for Inoue today. It was. It wasn't. It was. He's had harder fights. He's had harder fights. This probably wasn't even in the top 3 hardest fights he's ever had. Think
The
about that.
top of my head, Maloney and Nonito were harder fights than this.
He's I thought David Carmona, if you want to dig deep, gave him a harder fight than this today. So
Who
he's
was
had
Omar Navarre? Who was the
Navarez. Omar was that was the guy he knocked out in the second round back in the day. Yeah, that was like his for me, that was his oh shit fight for me, at least. Well, I remember when he knocked Navarez out 2 rounds, I said, oh, okay, we got something here. I didn't think he was an all-time great at that point or was going to be, but I certainly thought this guy's really good. And I don't think people realize it. And then when he came to the United States and he beat the shit out of Antonio Nieves, that's when it was like, okay, you should be paying attention to this guy. And clearly not enough people were today. And they were listening to people all week that really don't have any right to give boxing opinions in my opinion.
No, if you make a YouTube channel, you should definitely be able to. Come on, Gray. You got to, if you can figure out how to make a Google account.
It's the, and they're the ones with the engagement numbers. It's sad, unfortunately. I would not take betting tips from people. I mean, I'll give the Philly Godfather credit. Like he was talking a lot of shit and he did apologize a little bit today, but like, you don't, just because you're in one guy's gym all the time and you've been up this guy's butt his whole career, you have to sometimes take a step back and go, can this guy really pull this off going to Japan, and look at it from you have to take a step back and look at it from a reasonable perspective instead of throwing the blinders on and telling people that, plus money Fulton is value and he might even knock Inoue out. That is even more further detached from reality than Fulton winning, in my opinion. That was the thing that was blowing my mind. I was seeing people going, he's going to hurt Inoue with what, a fucking shovel? Because that's what he would have needed today to hurt Inoue, was with a shovel. He didn't have a shovel. So I saw a fight that went one way. And it was kind of what I expected it to be, except that he stopped him. I thought he was good enough to maybe hang in for 12, but clearly not. Is what it is.
To
I still like
me,
Fulton.
I actually really like Fulton. I actually thought this. I'm gonna give you
probably
a hot
win a
take.
title at featherweight. I mean, he's really good. This is a guy that's exceptional. That's the problem.
I comp Stephen Fulton to Kevin Kelly. That's like if we were to do NBA comparison.
Okay.
I thought that this was Fulton, like, as weird as it sounds, this was his best fight ever. Like, he wasn't doing a lot wrong. He was just in with a guy that was just, every time he was doing something, the guy did something better.
The fight very serious. Looked like he had a great camp and he has a really good trainer. They did everything right, They got themselves to where they needed to be for this fight. It wasn't like he was unprepared. It was just that he was in there with a guy who's insanely skilled and clearly was very motivated by perhaps some of the antics that were happening about the wrapping and all that. And I'm sure the hand wraps and all that and the gloves. And I'm sure those little things, they need. And I'm sure in a way, I don't know how online he is, but I'm sure people in his circle are like, you have a lot of doubters in America. And I'm sure that that fight is fuel to the fire. When he jumped up on the ropes and celebrated after that first knockdown, you can tell there was like a release of a lot of pent up frustration, because to me, he seems like a guy that normally wouldn't do that. He would be very focused on the guy, getting up off the knockdown. But I was like, oh, wow, he's jumping on those ropes. And he did finish him off, so it didn't really matter. But I was just like, oh, you could tell that there was a lot of frustration, I think, being released at that moment. Yeah.
That was kind of iconic, because that was like, I was almost looking at it as like, is this phase 2 in a way? Is this like the start of a new Inoue?
Sure.
Because he's been like this guy where it's like, he's almost like an old school WCW wrestler, like a Sid Vicious. He's coming out, you play the song, within 2 minutes, the guy's down. If you know nothing, you kind of laugh and think this is a helpless guy. If you're you and me, you know the guy's a world champion who earned a title that he did it to.
Sure.
And this was like, I've never seen him in a build up to a fight more emotional, and he was still stoic, but it's like, I've never seen him stare down an opponent. He always looks kind of bored. I've never seen him look a little frustrated with an opponent.
Yep.
And I think that's a great observation, because I think that when they do the Inoue documentary about being a Hall of Famer, that might be the image that sums up his career.
Oh, this will probably, I think, will be the most important fight of his career looking back, or one of the top 2, top 3. I mean, it's a big turning moment in his career. He won a lot of people over today. He opened up a lot of eyes that should have been opened up already. I don't know what you're doing. Again, stop listening to people that don't have these giant platforms and don't watch boxing under 126 pounds. They only watch 3 fights a year. They give you betting tips or opinions that are just far detached from reality. Stop listening to those people. Stop giving them engagement. Just please, just like for the love of God. But yeah, I mean, it's always his skill level. The skill has always been there. This is a guy, like, really, he's had one time in his life where he was in trouble in a fight, and it was briefly against Donaire in that first fight. And people love to play the clip. And I'm thinking to myself, who was the guy in the 11th round that got hit by the body shot that was retreating? And if that stupid referee hadn't been standing in between the two, Inoue would have leapt around him and probably blasted his head into orbit. But Donaire was able to take the knee. If you remember, Donaire was completely defenseless at that moment, and that dumb referee hadn't been standing in the middle of them for no reason. Inoue jumps on him and beats the shit out of him. And that's what he did against Fulton. When Fulton got off that knockdown, he pounced on him. He did not let him off that hook. And I think that first Donaire fight probably doesn't sit well with him still to this day, because of, people play that clip. But then he, of course he sends him into the ether in 2 rounds in the rematch, but no one wants to talk. We forget about that. It's that final of the World Boxing Super Series that they focus on, and then his face got fucked up. So
I watched a Sean Porter clip today on his podcast, and they were like, I saw a guy on there, I don't know who he is, but shout out to him, much respect, brother. And they're like, who has Inoue fought? And it's kind of like, I'm getting tired of my 2 guys, Inoue and Usyk. This is what people always say. It's just because you don't watch these weight classes doesn't mean.
Yeah. How about the 4th guy he beat in his career for fucking unified titles at 108 pounds? He beat a unified world champion. The guy, did it after the fight, but he beat that guy went on to unified belts. He beat in his 6th fight. He beat the best guy at 108 pounds at that time, Adrian Hernandez. Okay.
You're going past me, Gray. You're going past the Lukie realm. I'm impressed. I'm having to fall back.
Navarez was that 115. Look, he stunk it out against
112. Should have won a belt there.
He skipped 112. Didn't even bother there. He said, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to jump up 2 weight classes, and I'm going to beat this guy that had 20 fucking title defenses. Easy. 2 rounds, send him into the ether. And wins World Boxing Super Series. Okay.
Don't forget Jamie McDonnell. A very, very respectable world champion.
So you're looking at his run at 118 potentially. If Manuel Rodriguez wins a title and Donaire wins a title this weekend, which is very possible, you could be looking at Maloney, Rodriguez, and Donaire as your 3 champions, along with Inoue's brother. Inoue beat 3 of those guys already. That's cleaning out a division. That's beating the top guys, because those guys are going on to win world titles. Now they run the division. So that is the definition of cleaning out a division. He cleaned it out. There's nothing left. Bye-bye. That's what he did at 118. You will go back one day and you'll be like, damn, that it's not just the tournament. It's not just the tournament. He did what he did after the tournament as well. He unified the belts. He beat Donaire again so people would shut the fuck up about it. He did everything he had to do with that weight class. He could not have done anything more. Incredible. And now he comes up today to fight everybody's favorite, the number 1 guy at the weight class. And he just took him. Paul Butler was able to stand on his feet longer. That's crazy. Paul Butler.
But to be fair, I also think Inoue cared about as much as I cared about the Butler fight.
He cared. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he was a lot more motivated for this fight, but I'm just saying that, this is an eye-opening performance. This isn't just a 116, 112 win on the scorecards. No.
The way he won, he stood in front of him and outboxed him. Yes, I don't know what the reach difference was, but I'd assume Fulton might have had a bit of a reach difference. Yeah. But he used his body better than Fulton and punched with him and made the bigger man, in theory, have to go backwards.
Right. He did. He bullied him. He was the bully tonight. He was the bully, and he was the boxer. He was everything he needed to be tonight. He did everything right. It is seriously, we'll look back on this as one of the probably the defining moment of this year for any fighter. It's going to be this fight.
And the best thing about it is the whole world is going to totally write it off by Sunday night. because they're going to say Spence Crawford. That defines the generation. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited, but
and when it's a 7-5 fight that wasn't that memorable, which I truly believe it will be, that maybe I'll be wrong. I hope it's a great fight, but when it is, I want those people saying the winner of that's pound for pound and go, are you sure about that? Because there's a guy that's knocking dudes out in the top of his division, like, and this isn't a guy chasing after vacant titles. He's chasing after interim titles. He's going after he went after the unified champion and beat him easily. So
let me throw this at you, because I've been standing firm on Usyk's my number one guy.
Okay.
Right. And Usyk kind of, I get your point because he's having some close fights with people. But to me, I respect the fact that Usyk goes on the road and beats guys on the road, because that's like the most unboxing thing ever. To me right now, the two best guys in the sport, maybe you see it differently. It's Usyk and Inoue. How do you discern who's better?
I mean, I think I don't really like ranking heavyweights high. If you were to do again, I don't really like pound for pound lists, so this is like a weird debate, weird discussion.
Well, number 10's our guy Chris Lovejoy.
Oh, Jesus!
So you got to save Chris on our. We tried to get him, but he has his own live stream right now.
Chris is doing big numbers on YouTube. Good for him. No, I mean, like, if you were to like rank them, I guess, in a list, like, I think I usually don't really view heavyweights very highly because I feel like the skill level is very low compared to other divisions. Even though guys hit harder, I still think that fighters are just more skilled at the lower weight classes. But for Usyk, I'll make an exception and say he deserves to be up there because of his good run at cruiser, and then he obviously wins fights on the road. And he did a lot of that earlier in his career too. And until like, he's a very skilled heavyweight. So
best cruiserweight ever.
Yeah,
he beats Holyfield.
Most likely. So I mean, you got to put him up there, I guess. I don't know where. Again, I don't feel, it feels weird putting a number on it, but yeah, he's one of the. He's like, I would call it like the tier, like the top, S tier, tiers. So we're gonna do like a tier list of all the champions in boxing or whatever. Maybe I should make a video and tier them, because I feel like that would help my brain a little better. But yes, he's obviously in that top tier along with Inoue, and then within that tier, I'd have to probably play around with it, but it's close right now. Yeah, for sure.
The way I look at that tier, it's like you got Usyk, Inoue. You got Bivol because he beat Canelo.
Yeah, he
Canelo was the guy.
He's probably at the end. He's probably at the back of that tier. You know what I mean? Like, but he's in that tier now.
He's in that house.
He's in that house.
He's in that house. And then you got Spence Crawford.
Yep.
That's that tier. You could make a point for Juan Francisco Estrada, but I personally think he's in tier 2. He had a shaky fight with Chocolatito.
He's in the A tier. He's exactly. He's been a little too shaky. Who's that guy he almost lost to?
RG Cortes.
Yeah, RG Cortes, I think he's got a fight coming up. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I remember that RG Cortes fight. I was like, man, not a guy I put in my top tier after seeing that. Nope.
Yeah, very, very, like, he'll fight to the ultimate fight to the level of his competition guy.
He does. And again, I feel like a top tier guy doesn't necessarily do that. He is a guy that is clearly beating fighters and clearly beating top fighters. Would you put Canelo in the top tier? Not to make this a conversation about Canelo, but would you still put him in the top tier?
He's in tier 2.
Tier 2? Like, I put it like front of tier 2. Like him and Tank.
The face.
Yeah, the face, and then you got Tank kind of hanging out there. I'd even argue Tank's probably end of tier 1 too. Like, there's another guy I think that's probably should be up there in that conversation, obviously. But yeah, there's not a lot of guys in tier 1 right now off the top of my head that I would put up there. Yeah.
I mean, I think we just forget how good he is. Charlo's like tier 2 to me.
Yeah, if he beats Canelo, he's definitely in tier 1. Definitely.
And then like Fulton to me is like tier 4. He's in the tiers, but he's in like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have probably before this fight put him in end of tier 2, maybe top of tier 3. But yeah, he definitely gets bumped down a little because lost his belts. But I think he'll be back, man. I think featherweight is the right move for him. Less weight to cut, and it'll be good for him. But do you think he regrets taking 13 months off for this fight? Man, I was thinking about that today. I think he regrets that a bit.
I just think that like he's doing a lot of thinking. Like I think he's a guy that's on the internet a bit. He enjoyed this build up. And I think that he truly got confused with what he saw in the ring. Like, I think he mentally thought he was going to see one thing, and he said,
Yeah.
"Oh God, this isn't like it." Looked like Chris Algieri had a great line for Teofimo when he fought Cambosis, and it was he was living in a nightmare. And I saw that look in Fulton's eyes in the second round, where it's like, "What the freak, bro?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard to have a plan B, C, D, when things aren't going your way, it's like it's hard to jump over that hurdle. So I think he's so used to having things go his way, right? It's probably another thing he's never lost. So it's never really had I mean, he's overcome a little adversity against Figueroa, I guess, because he stood in the fucking pocket and traded with that crazy guy.
I mean,
But
that was one
uh,
of the weirdest fights because it's like it was
he
like
could have he could
basically a
have beat
draw.
him. Yeah, yeah. He could have. I thought he was the more talented of the two fighters that night, but the scorecard I looked down. I'm like, I have this 6-6. Seriously, like what?
Well, and it's like I think what really bothered me about that fight was Fulton got hurt in the first half, the middle half, and the
Yeah.
last half of the fight to the body. And it's like in that, I think we all going into that, I thought Fulton was a tier 2 guy. He went into tier 4 for me for that because it was like, come on, Steve. Like, I get that Figueroa is this super durable, crazy guy, but he's had a lot of shaky performances in his career. And he
Sure.
basically just was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fight exactly how Figueroa wants me to fight.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give Fulton a lot of credit for doing this fight. Always fought a lot. He's fought a lot of undefeated guys in his career. He's not afraid to take on challenges, and I respect that immensely. And I really genuinely hope he wins another world title and he continues to have a great career. Because there's not a lot of guys that are just like, yeah, like sign me up for undefeated guys early, like even fighting guys like Joshua Greer early in his
Adam
career.
Lopez, I believe, was
Adam
undefeated
Lopez.
when he fought
Right,
him.
yeah, it's undefeated. Like those are fights where a lot of fighters are actively not trying to do that. They are trying to get to the top level as easy as possible. And Fulton didn't do that. He really took on a lot of challenges. He wasn't really the focal point of those PBC cards back in the day either. He fought a lot off of TV, so he wasn't like the Olympian that's getting all the steam early in his career. He had to really earn it. So I don't want people, even though I'm like, in a way, one, I told you all, like, I don't mean to, it's still the end of the day. Someone has to lose. It sucks, but, I hope he comes back. I respect what he's done for Philly, and he's a good fighter. He's a great fighter.
Yeah, I think he's also underappreciated. I think there's tons of good fights. Just matchmaker Lukie thinking.
Mm,
You got Gary Russell if he ever comes back. You got the
no,
Figueroa rematch built in.
I
The
don't
fight I
care.
want to see is the Colbert fight. If he somehow one day got to 130, Fulton versus Colbert, just I
I
feel like
don't,
that would just be
another
a
guy.
weird, like a really weird, fun buildup. I'm not sure how much Chris Colbert we get in our life, but there's names there,
Yeah,
and I feel like I really like. I don't want to compare him to Zuma Nelson versus Salvador Sanchez, but it does feel kind of like people are going to look back at Fulton and realize how good he was
yeah,
because he'll have a second chapter. And right now, people just put so much faith because they didn't watch Inoue and wanted to say he sucked that they kind of are like down on Fulton right now.
crazy. I mean, really, the only guys I think, yeah, I think Fulton has some good fights at featherweight. I mean, I'm looking at featherweight right now, and it's like, man, there's not a lot of guys at featherweight that I really think give, in a way, a lot of trouble. Maybe Ray Vargas, just because of his
What
style and
about
his
Venado?
who?
Venado Lopez, Luis Alberto Lopez.
Oh, Luis. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a
Got
good
that
one.
jailhouse style. I feel like that could be a
Yeah,
I'd love to see Josh Warrington versus Inoue just because I know it would be weird.
yeah. Do you think Top Rank's gonna try and pitch Robeisy at some point if he wants to move to featherweight? If Robeisy still got that belt?
I mean, why would you put I think you're answering the question, but why would you put Robeisy on a card in Japan in the co-main?
That's what they were doing. They were doing this. They were thinking about it. They're going, well, if he moves up to 126, they got a two-time U.S. Cuban Olympian. Well, Cuban Olympian who fucking hates his own country, and I don't blame him. That was shitty what they did to him. But
Didn't let the national anthem play and they
so
filmed the video so we
so
get to see him
petty.
discouraged.
So petty. Yeah, really stupid. But yeah, Robeisy is I think very underrated featherweight. I think that guy is got a lot of good tools in the toolbox. He can punch, he can box. I think, people still remember his embarrassing pro debut where he was lazy in the ring, and I don't think I've seen that guy. I mean, he wasn't really that impressive in his first 4 or 5 fights. I remember thinking like, man, they got a lemon, but he's really turned the tide in his last like
He's pretty good now, bro.
fights.
I think he could
Yeah,
have done better
he's
against
pretty good.
Dogbo, but he's pretty
I
friggin'
mean,
awesome.
I'm followed Abraham Nova's career because he's fought a lot in New England. And I always thought Abraham Nova was a good fighter, and I'd seen him live, and I was like, man, that'll be an interesting fight. And then when he got knocked out, I'm thinking, okay, this guy is a different this is the world title level. Because I remember seeing Abraham Nova, I thought, yeah, maybe Abraham Nova could win a title, but yeah, Ramirez really, that was a fight for me, at least exceeded my expectations. And since then, he's been putting on consistently good performances. He's really stepped it up and taken his career a lot more seriously. So I think he could be potentially a really interesting opponent for Inoue. Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, like, think about that. Up until the Nova fight, we had never seen Ramirez weaponize his skills. He was a back foot boxer. He goes into Nova and he's chasing him and he's like a predator using his skills to create offensive openings. I think that's when he kind of turned the corner and like adapted a more professional style.
Definitely. He was kind of just getting away on raw talent in those go watch those fights when 2010, 2020, early 2021. Like he was just getting away with like just being what he's new in the amateurs. But now I feel like he's a little scary in that ring now. He's definitely a scary opponent. Shimizu, I didn't expect him to do much today because he's a little past it. But I mean, he's also had a deep amateur career. I think he medaled in the Olympics as well. So, this wasn't like some 11-1 guy they found off the street. Like he had quite a, career boxing as well. And he got just dominated. So, like,
I mean, that was the theme of the card, right? And I'm pretty sure we got Venado versus Joet Gonzalez. The winner of that fight, it feels like, is going to be fighting Robeisy in 2024.
Yeah. Joet should send Top Rank a Christmas card. Thanks for another opportunity. This is it. I mean, if he doesn't
new Rocky Juarez.
He's gonna be if he loses this one. Yeah, he's the guy that can't get over the hoop, and I feel or whatever can't get to the touchdown. Go to end zone. Can't make the touchdown.
Can't score. We'll make it sports agnostic.
Sorry, yeah, I'm very bad at my analogies, but I'm saying is like this Lopez is I like Lopez a lot, but I think their issue with Lopez is that he's just another guy right now. He's not like very marketable,
tough
whatever.
As hell. Like
he's awesome. I love
journeyman that is winning fights and beating prospects.
Yeah. He clearly has gotten a lot better. Like he was a guy that I think I remember your guy Ruben Villa. When he beat him, I thought, okay, this guy's just a
developmental tester.
But then all of a sudden,
beats Gabe, beats Andy, beats Isaac Lowe,
beats all the California guys, and
goes on the California circuit. It's like Ruben Villa like created an origin story where he had to go after California people like a villain.
Like, I hate to say it, but like, I think Ruben Villa deserves to be in this position on the 15th than Joet Gonzalez does. Ruben Villa should be fighting in the main event.
I agree because he beat him.
But for whatever reason, Joet Gonzalez gets the opportunity, but it should be Ruben Villa in that fight. But regardless, my point is that if Lopez gets by him, yeah, of course you got to put Lopez in that discussion. But again, I think Lopez is a bit flawed. He's got some good power. Love his body punching, but that's another guy I think Inoue would just probably do pretty well against. I think at featherweight. I think Robeisy be a very fun fight. So I think if the winner, let's say he gets by Gonzalez. Maybe he fights Villa, Robeisy fights Villa. Somebody needs to, Villa deserves to be in that picture too. So I think if he gets by Gonzalez, let's say Robeisy fights Villa, they both get by each other. I think we're looking at a very, very interesting 2024 featherweight. You could have a unified champion for Inoue to be fighting against. It could be a very, very, big deal. And they have to go to Japan, in my opinion. I think if you have to fight Inoue, you got to fight him in Japan. That's my feeling.
Yeah, you get paid.
You get paid, and he deserves it. Inoue doesn't have any. Inoue is not entitled to have to come here. He's not. I'm sorry, but like when you're one of the best in the world, you come to him. You do, and that's
until
a
you beat him. It's the Chris John rule. I
Yes.
understand people. A lot of
Chris
people started
John
watching
rule.
boxing when Pacquiao and Mayweather fought,
Sure.
and Pacquiao or Mayweather McGregor.
Get on that flight to Indonesia. You have to beat him.
Did he beat Marquez? Was that who Chris John beat?
Yeah, that was the whole deal with that was in the message board era where people were like very divided if that fight was like, I think people couldn't come to terms that Chris John actually won that fight, which you know, you go look, not exactly incredible footage on YouTube, but a lot that was always the feeling that a lot of people were like, whoa, Marquez. It's like, no, Chris John won that fight. Sorry guys, but he did.
And then like it's like him, Felix Sturm. They were guys that just held belts hostage in like these cities.
Every German pretty much in the early 2000s would have a WBO title and they would all hold the titles hostage. Absolutely. A lot of those guys did. So, you know, but I mean, Inoue is deserving of you should have to come to him. That's my feeling. He doesn't have to come to you. No way.
Final thought. We can't let you leave before you give your Spence. Well, actually, before I get to Spence Crawford, even though we're strapping time, bigger upset play. Cabrera beats Pitbull.
Oh. Yeah.
Or Santiago beats Donaire. Which one would you put your $5 you never want to see again on?
Santiago beating Donaire. Without hesitation. Donaire's 41, and the lower weight classes, it's gonna hit the age is gonna hit him at some point, and this could be the fight. Santiago's a good little fighter. Again, this is kind of like he's kind of a little bit like the Luis Alberto Lopez situation, where he's a guy that you kind of really probably might be a gatekeeper his whole career. Now all of a sudden, here he is in the title shot. And let me tell you, if you're gonna fight for a bantamweight title and your opponent's 41 years old and it's been in a lot of wars, you have a decent chance to win this fight.
Paco Damian promotes him. That's Jose Felix Jr.'s promoter too.
Santiago has a very, very good chance to win this fight. In my opinion, compared to Cabrera would have to outbox Cruz for 12. It's a 12 rounder, not a 10 rounder, right? So he had to pretty much pitch a very close to a perfect game, just outboxing him, superior ring movement, and Cruz would have to really throw up a dud. Now, Cruz has thrown up some stinkers before, absolutely. He had one of the worst fights of all time on Showtime against that guy from Argentina.
I forget what that was, but I remember you and me were going off on that, like because you were all in on him. You wanted Rolly versus Isaac Cruz.
Yeah, trash fight. It was a trash fight. So he could very well throw up a stinker, but I'm more confident in Santiago beating a 41-year-old Donaire than I am Cabrera figuring it out over 12 rounds against Cruz, even though I think Cruz is a little
kind of beatable.
Yeah, he's
kind of beatable.
Yeah, very beatable. So
I mean, I feel like both of those are plays, but like I really like that Santiago pick. Final thing, my heart wants Crawford to win, but everything about boxing tells me Spence is going to do it. Gray, give me the real take.
I said Spence points. I think it's going to be a 8-4, 7-5.
And then we got to get a 9-3, a 10-2. Just one judge that didn't even watch the fight. That would just make it the perfect fight.
I think if one guy gets hurt, though, it's going to be Spence. I think Crawford is definitely capable of buckling Spence, and if he can hurt him, man, it will be very interesting because Crawford is a very, very good finisher. He's very good at jumping on you when you're hurt. He does not let you off the hook. So we'll see how well Spence can adjust. But I just think, if you're watching this and Crawford can't come out with go down 0-4, in my opinion. He does it a lot where he's down 3-1, 0-4, just these slow fucking starts. And if he does this against Spence, man, I think Spence is in another class of fighter where he
throws a lot too, Gray. Spence is a very active fighter and he's the bigger fighter.
I mean, watch Mikey Garcia couldn't keep up with him, right? So, and that's like the ultimate like outworking fight effort from him, in my opinion. Just watching Mikey barely able to keep up his pace for 12 rounds. So Yeah, I mean, like, I think you wouldn't be surprised if Spence is up 3-1, 4-0, and you're biting down on your nails a bit because Crawford's just not starting fast. He never starts fast. So, they need to figure that. They need to figure out those early rounds because of to me, this feels like a scorecard fight, and they need to make sure these rounds are clear that they're winning, so.
I feel like
Yeah.
if Crawford loses, people are going to completely write him off and Larry Holmes him.
Oh, 100%. They're ready to. Everyone's sick. A lot of the people on Twitter are very sick of Crawford. They are ready to bury him if he loses this fight. So 100%. I think he would get Larry Holmes. So this is their rematch. I think there's a rematch clause on this.
There's a
right?
rematch clause, but I feel like people would just put him in that final thing. Andreas Cortes, Xavier Martinez. This is such a gray fight.
Oh,
this is
okay.
like the battle of two people. They're the same person. What's your impression with this? Because this is a true 50-50er to me.
Yeah. I was kind of Xavier. I have to remember what his last fight. Okay, so yeah,
He missed
knocked out
weight for
Alejandro.
his last fight.
He
So
missed
you're
weight.
supposed to fight and he missed weight.
Yeah, and he stopped Alejandro Guerrero after a very, very unimpressive performance against Robson, where I was like, I don't know about this guy. Yeah, I mean, they're both kind of in that must-win situation. I tend to edge Cortes. I haven't really seen Cortes struggle in the ring. But I mean, this is obviously his defining fight now if he's ready for contender status to move past the
Is this
borderline.
the top rank? We don't know what to do with you fight.
A little bit, yeah. I think they were just like, we got two guys here that are kind of in the same level. We need to figure out which one we're going to push and which one is probably going to get released. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Great. Where can people support you? You do a ton of good stuff besides that.
Go to BoxRec.com, log in, it's free. BoxRecGrey, BoxRecGrey, on Twitter.